because they'll see the presentation. All right, so thank you all for coming here. This presentation, targeting students and instructors from AI misuse in the classroom. Now, I'm a biology instructor. I'm not an expert on computers, AI at all. But the reason why I wanted to do this talk was because I've been teaching asynchronous online classes for a couple of years, and I've experienced personally an increase in students using AI to cheat on assignments and exams. So I wanted to share my own frustrations, my own experiences, my strategies for dealing with this in my own classes. I'd recommend, if you want to get more information on AI from someone who kind of knows about AI and how to use it, there's a lot of workshops and videos by Norma Jones that I would recommend that I think are really educational. But the purpose of this talk will be more kind of from the instructor side of it. What can we do about students misusing AI? Maybe we just click here real quick. Okay. So I'm first going to talk about how AI allows cheating, how students can use AI to teach on assignments and exams, and then how instructors can detect this type of AI misuse, how we can prevent it, some suggestions from my own experiences on disciplinary actions, and then how kind of fighting against AI misuse protects students and also protects instructors. And then I'll have a little fun thing at the end where I talk about some negative consequences of AI use in our society at large. So that'll be kind of topics covered in this topic. Or you could just show some things. So for an instructor especially, I think it's important to know how students can use AI to potentially cheat on assignments. So what kind of assignments can students cheat on? So I'm going to go through some of the assignments I've used and ways in which AI can kind of bypass those assignments and allow students to kind of answer them without doing any work. Can you click on the screen again? Okay. So this is a real multiple choice question from my environmental biology class. And what I did is I just asked GPT this. I said, please answer this multiple choice question. A resource that replenishes very slowly like natural gas would be categorized as what kind of resource? Renewable, sustainable, non-renewable, or infinite. So I asked it, I said, this is a multiple choice question, give me the answer. And this is what it answered, which is kind of lengthy. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to show you this part in bold. It got it right. Natural gas is classified as a non-renewable resource. In fact, I put every single question from my quiz to ChatGPT and it got them all right. So that's good for the AI. I also gave it an open-ended question. So this is a question I've used in exams in the past. Choose 3 energy sources and compare the advantages and disadvantages of each form of energy. And this is what it gave me, which is pretty extensive. I'm not going to go through all of it, but it chose 3 energy sources: fossil fuels, solar energy, nuclear energy. What it wrote made sense. It was accurate. It started with a nice little intro, which I put in bold. When evaluating energy sources, it's essential to compare their advantages and disadvantages to determine their suitability for various application and contexts. It also made a nice little summary at the end as well. So here's an example of a student cheating response. So this is from an actual exam. And one thing Canvas does is it records how long it takes, how long a student took to answer a question. So this only took them 15 minutes out of a 45-minute time limit, which I think is way too low if this was actually written by a student. And really extensive, uses a lot of vocabulary and terminology that I didn't cover in lecture. And I also wanted to highlight the opening because it sounds quite similar to how the opening sounded in the AI-generated answer. When considering the best energy sources to invest in for our future, it's crucial to weigh the benefits and disadvantages of each option. It also ends with like a nice, tidy concluding sentence where it says, by choosing solar energy investment, we can move towards a cleaner, more sustainable energy future for generations to come. Which to me is another giveaway that this is likely written by AI, because it's too tidy introduction and conclusion. Here's another example of a student response on an exam. This is 2 questions that they wrote. The first question, they were supposed to categorize energy sources as renewable or non-renewable and talk about sustainability. And the second question was to contrast the international response to global warming to that of the ozone hole. You can see they wrote a lot of information here, but it took this student 3 minutes to write both of these. So all they did is they copy and pasted my prompt into an AI program, copy and pasted the answer back into the exam, and they were done. So no effort put in here, 3 minutes to write both of these combined. I think maybe they weren't aware that instructors know how long it takes to answer a particular exam question. In contrast, I want to show you what a real, authentic student answer looks like. And it took them 30 minutes to write this. Okay, and I highlighted this section because I think it's kind of typical of what you see in a response actually written by a student. The purpose, if the Montreal Protocol, was to phase out the production of CFC. Global warming, on the other hand, varies in how real it is based on who you speak to. It's not taking it serious, and there's nowhere near the same amount of unison in efforts to fixing it as there was with the ozone hole. So there's mistakes here, it's sloppily written, it's not nearly as formal, but this is what most students actually sound like when they write, especially when they're writing for like an exam when they're pressed for time. Okay, so I think from experience, from reading students' responses, I can kind of tell pretty easily, is this something that seems 100% written by a student, or is there warning bells going off in my head when I read it? And you might think, like I kind of thought this, what if in your question you say you have to connect to this personally? You have to say, how does this question or this issue relate to you in your own life? Maybe that's something AI can't do. But the problem is AI can do this. AI can add a personal touch to an answer. I put this to check GPT. I said, what kind of energy should we invest in the future? Please write 2 paragraphs and include a personal anecdote about my family regarding solar energy. And I just wanted to read you the paragraph it wrote from personal experience. I'll read a little bit to you. In my own family, our commitment to renewable energy became personal when we decided to install solar panels on the roof of our home a few years ago. The decision was motivated by our desire to reduce our carbon footprint and contribute positively to the environment. Initially, I was skeptical about whether we would see the benefits, especially during the cloudy winter months. However, witnessing the dramatic drop in our electricity bills and the knowledge that we were using clean energy transformed my perspective. It became a family affair with weekend projects to maintain the panels and monitoring their efficiency together, discussing how our small investment made a significant impact. You can see it's really doing a good job of kind of BSing this answer, of pretending that it's a person that had these real experiences connecting to solar energy. This was completely written by AI from this prompt. Yes?
Now, if you had told the student to include the names of people in their family and their own name,
I think it could do that.
then ChatGPT couldn't do it.
I think it could, because I've asked it to include at least my name. I say, put in Joshua, and like that's me, put me into the answer as if that's who's writing it, and it's done that. So I think it can do that. It might just make up names, but it can pretty well pretend to be a person. I could go closer to the speaker if it's not. I can stand closer too. I want to go back to the. Now, one strategy I've done to try and reduce the likelihood of students using AI is to ask them to watch and interpret video clips. And AI has a harder time of doing this. So if a student doesn't actually want to do any of the work and they don't want to watch a video clip, it's harder for AI to bypass this kind of assignment. If they use an AI that just can't watch the video, then it'll guess to what the video is about. And if the student's not careful, there will be kind of dead giveaways in their answer that show that AI was used. And this is, I think, part of why I knew that like, oh, a lot more students are using this than I thought. Like their answer will have something like, the video may show, or the video likely shows, or one student actually wrote this and they didn't even catch it. I'm not able to watch videos, however, and then they wrote something. So it's like, there's no reason why a student would ever write this, because the assignment is to watch a video. And if they had a technical issue, they would have told me. But there's no reason to say, well, I'm just guessing as to what the video is about. That's only showing that they were using AI to do the work for them. And this is from a recent example that I had in my class, where they were talking about a video about species conservation. They said the video, it may also cover efforts by conservationists and policymakers to address the issue and protect these species from further decline. So if they're kind of too lazy or they're not catching this, this is kind of a dead giveaway. This is almost certainly written by AI, because there's no reason why a student should do this. And if they are just guessing at the video, then they get a 0 anyway, because they're not doing the assignment. But the problem is, even this isn't foolproof. And there are ways of getting around this for a student who's a little bit more dedicated to getting away with cheating, to summarize video clips using AI. So I kind of did this myself, but I asked ChatGPT this. I said, please summarize a video that has this description. And I copied and pasted this description from the YouTube video. So it says, off the coast of Grimsby, England, more than 300 wind turbines produce electricity to help power over 2 million homes a day. Sharon Alfonsi reports on how the turbines work and how the project has been received. So that's all I gave to the AI program. And I basically said, craft something out of this. And it did. So this is what it came up with. I just want to read a little bit to you. In a captivating report by Sharon Alfonsi, viewers are taken on a journey to the wind farm off the coast of Grimsby, England, where over 300 towering wind turbines work tirelessly to generate clean, renewable energy. And then it goes on, and I want to read you this part in bold too, where it says, while some residents celebrate the environmental benefits and economic opportunities associated with the wind farm, others express concerns about the visual impact on the landscape. I just want to remind you, that wasn't in the summary that I gave it. Like, this is the AI kind of pulling that out of its butt. It's saying, maybe this was covered in the video. I think it probably was, and it wasn't. It wasn't covered like that, but it's just trying to create content that seems likely to be included in that summary. So that was, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good at sounding like a good answer, just based completely off of a little short summary. It's just kind of fluffy and there's not actually a lot of content there. Yes,
Now, some YouTube videos come with transcripts,
you're right.
so if they put that in there. then-
You're right, and that's another thing, I don't have a slide on that, but that is another thing you could do, and I have had that happen as well. That in most cases, it's more of a case of classic plagiarism, that they'll just take the transcript and they'll
Yeah.
do like the first paragraph of the transcript and they'll just copy and paste that, and then they get a 0 for that as well. But you could copy and paste the whole, not that I'm encouraging students to do this, but they could copy the transcript and ask ChatGPT, summarize this in 4 sentences, and then boom, that's a way they could get around it. Yeah. One way to fix that as an instructor is but it's already a lot of work to do what I've done, is to actually take all those videos and download them and put them into like Yuja, so they're not connected to YouTube. And then that would bypass a lot of this, but I haven't seen enough issues, particularly with AI being used for these video assignments, for that to be worth how much time that would take for me. But you're right, transcripts are a way around it. Another thing that I kind of discovered while working on this talk is that there are AI programs that can be added as Chrome plugins, and they can be used to summarize anything, any type of website, including videos. So these are not quite as well known, I think, but I used an AI plugin called Recall, and I loaded, this is one of the videos I had my students watch recently. This is about biodiesel industry and deforestation. So I have this plugin called Recall, and I just loaded the video, I pressed summarize, and it took 10 seconds, and you can see it wrote a really nice summary of everything in the video for 10 seconds. It even put it into nice little categories. So you could also take this, copy and paste it into ChatGPT, say, condense this into a paragraph, and then bang, you're done and you don't have to do any work at all. So even this type of assignment isn't foolproof against a student who really doesn't want to do any of the work that they're supposed to do. And other types of assignments, you might think, well, maybe this can be protected against AI. Like if you said, well, you have to turn in an outline for a presentation. AI can make that. You can say, I'm gonna do this presentation, make an outline. Or it could say, make a rough draft and then edit your draft. AI can do all of them. I've had students who did an oral presentation, but their script that they read was completely written by AI. So they're still using AI to tell them what to do. The only thing that they're actually doing is speaking the words. But AI can be used to bypass all of these assignments. It can write a paper, including the use of references. A lot of times it'll get references wrong. It'll make up references, or I've had cases where it included a bunch of references that had nothing to do with the topic of the paper, but it'll do it. And if an instructor isn't careful, if they don't read it carefully, it could slip by them. So all of these types of assignments can be cheated using AI. I would argue, and I've thought about this a lot, I don't think it's possible to create any kind of online asynchronous assignment that is completely immune to a student using AI to kind of bypass it. You know, I can't think of one. I can think of ones that are less likely to be cheated on, but I can't think of one that is 100% foolproof protected against AI in an online asynchronous environment. So given that a lot of students are using AI to cheat on assignments and exams, how can we detect that? How can we tell that this is happening? I think if you're doing a good class where you have a lot of engagement, as people should, if you're an online instructor, it's too time consuming to check every response. Like I'll show you later how many responses I have for my online class, but it's too much to check every single one. So what I do is I just check those responses that seem fishy. If they're overly formal, if they use sophisticated jargon, especially jargon and terminology that I never used in lecture, specifically because I didn't want to confuse students. If they're using terminology I never use, and if it seems too detailed and too polished to be typical of a student response, I'll check it. I also check responses that are not fishy just to get the comparison, but I don't check all of them. So consider this question, and this was a question that students were supposed to answer their first day of class. So when they're first learning about the environment and environmental sciences. I just said, coming in, what's the biggest environmental problem today? What do you think? So this is a typical real student response that I got, kind of typical of what it would sound like. This is a complicated questions because there was a few, but to choose, I would have to say climate change is the biggest environmental problem that we need to address. So kind of sloppy, kind of wrong, like how it's written, but typical of what you would see from a student. And here's an AI, a real AI-generated answer. Climate change is the most pressing environmental issue, driven largely by greenhouse gas emissions from human activities. This has led to global warming, extreme weather, and ecosystem disruption, threatening life on Earth. This is from a student who is just starting to take environmental biology. They don't know what ecosystems are in almost every case. So them using the term ecosystem disruption, it makes no sense to me. It's a kind of a warning sign. And this was just supposed to be a friendly, hey, what do you think about the environment? What are some problems you can think of? And they give me this sophisticated answer that is full of jargon. It makes no sense. This is a really fishy response. So you can fight fire with fire. You can use AI to check work to see how likely it is written by AI. And I do this. And I know that there are risks involved in it, but I do it. I primarily use this website, which I found to be the most reliable. It's called GPT-0. There's a website if people want to use it. You'll get a number of free scans, but if you make a free account, you get more scans a month. I go through a lot, but for most people, it's probably sufficient if you just make a free account. So in the previous example, I took the typical student's response, the one who just wrote kind of like a normal student. I took all of their responses for that question, and they scored this. 3% probability AI generated, 97% probability written by a human. Okay. Then I took the fishy response, and it found out this, 100% probability AI generated. And you might wonder like, well, maybe that's just a fluke. I took the same response with several AI checking programs, all of them gave the same result. So this isn't, yes.
So basically, We build a better mousetrap and they build a better mouse.
That's right. Yes, it is a, kind of like an arms race, sort of.
What a queen.
Yes. And I'll talk about what we can do about that, but so far, yes, it's been an arms race. Yes.
I want to also point out that there are also websites out there or programs to humanize language.
Yes.
So that it doesn't look like.
Right, and I'll talk about that in a second, but you're absolutely right, yes. Okay. So when students use AI in a simple way, like the ones I've showed you, that they're just copying and pasting. They're just, I just want to give the AI the prompt and copy and paste what the AI says. This form of cheating is pretty easy to detect, and I would argue in most cases, when students use AI in this simple way, they get scored close to 100% probability. I think it's fairly reliable, especially if you're using multiple AI checks. The problem is the students who are lazy but not extremely lazy, or they're lazy but they're a little bit smart about it. If students are smart enough to reword their AI responses a little bit, or they mix their own sentences with AI-generated sentences, that can make it much harder to detect this type of AI misuse. And I did this myself. So this is an AI response on the ozone hole, what causes the ozone hole. And if you take this and put it into AI checking software, it scores 100% likely written by AI. Then I took this paragraph and I rewrote it. So I took out some of the terminology, I shortened it, I rephrased some of the sentences, I added a little human interest sentence at the end. As you can see, the ozone hole is a big problem. It reads very different from the technical sentences before, but adds a little bit of human flavor to it. And I tricked it, I tricked the AI. This only scored 15% likely written by AI. So if someone like me was trying to be deceptive about AI, I could get away with it, right? I could fool someone because I can change it enough. Another thing that kind of surprised me, but I want to point this out for instructors, is if they do really weird stuff to the formatting of their answers, if it seems like their answer is really formatted in a weird way, that can affect the AI detection in and of itself. Like this response, it might not seem that weird at first, but if you notice, it kind of breaks up the words, right? Ecosystems. The reason is that this response was actually just one long line. There was no enters in it. It was just one line, enormous line of text. It also had weird punctuation, like you can see there's like 2 periods here. And this fooled the AI software. You can see it scored 6% probability written by AI. But I could kind of tell from reading it that this was likely written by AI because it had a lot of technical information about elephants that was way beyond what I would normally see from a student who is doing research on elephants and using actual sources. Plus, as you can see, there's no sourcing here. They didn't add any sources, which they were supposed to. So I could tell something was wrong. So it took a lot of time, but I took this answer and I plugged it into like Notepad and I fixed all of the enters. I fixed all the formatting and I got rid of the double periods. And that by itself, then it scored 99% written by AI. So they thought they could get away with it by making this weird long line with double periods and weird formatting, but it's just because I could kind of tell from what was there that it was suspicious that I went to this trouble. But it did take a long time to do that. And like what was said, a lot of AI software is designed not for us. Like if you look there, a lot of it is designed for students to analyze their own work for how much their work seems like AI. So basically, they can use AI to write a paper for them, or an answer, and then they can keep editing it and keep sending it to the software until it scores human written. And you can see it here. This is from Grammarly. See what percentage of your text seems AI generated, so you can adjust it to sound more natural. Doesn't that sound like they're using AI and then they're adjusting it until it can pass as human? Like, why even phrase it that way if that's not the point? Here's another example. This is from a website called Writer. This was me trying to fix my text that I showed you before to pass as human. And it says 63% human generated content. You should edit your text until there's less detectable AI content. Like, isn't that just obviously saying this has got AI in it and fix it until it can't be detected anymore? The purpose seems to be to fool instructors, right? But that's what a lot of these websites are, which is not great. Yes,
How much is, I'm gonna play some devil's advocate.
go ahead.
Some, I've read some argue that this fixing part is actually teaching them something. I think I disagree,
Yes.
but some are
You
arguing that,
mean,
so AI is generating the whole thing, you're fixing it. I don't think it's learning.
right, I mean, I think if there was a class that was specifically about, like, the purpose of this class is to teach someone how to work in AI and how to take AI generated content and to edit it so it sounds more human, if that was the purpose of the class, then I would say I agree. But if the purpose is anything else, I disagree.
Yeah, content, right?
Yes, because like when I edited that about the ozone hole, I wasn't thinking at all. Even though I know a lot about the ozone hole, I was just, oh, let me just adjust this, let me adjust this, and then I'm done. I still put in 0 effort in forming that answer, or like 1% of effort compared to a student who actually did it themselves. So I disagree with you.
Yeah, you're basically, just taking the information and just editing it. You still don't know anything about it.
Yes, I agree, I think someone could argue that there are cases where AI could be useful for parts of the process, like, I'll get into it later, but like, let's say someone said, I'm just using AI I write a paper, and I'm using AI to fix my draft, to make a final draft. But I would say that process of fixing an earlier draft and making a final draft is also a skill that we want you to learn, that it's important to learn. So bypassing that step, you're also missing something that is part of the activity. Forming an outline for a presentation is a big part of the process of making a presentation. So I think any bypassing of those steps by AI, I think detracts from how much the student learns. Yeah,
I think like that's also true for like, let's say you're someone who's done this a lot and you're past like maybe a big chunk of your learning process and now you're using something to kind of create an online or an outline for something. But our students are still in like the learning process. And so it's not something good for them to skip.
yes,
You know, it's something that they need to do, and
yes,
it's okay if it doesn't come out 100% perfect, they can still do it.
yes, I agree, yeah. We could talk more about that in a little bit, as well. So takeaways from detection, I think that simple, kind of stupid use of AI, fortunately, is fairly easy to detect. But complex use of AI, if they rewrite stuff, if they add their own text to mix in with AI generated text, if they do weird formatting, this is difficult or maybe impossible to detect. If you have a smart student who's using AI but changing it quite a bit, so they're putting in maybe 1/3 of the effort of a student doing it themselves, that might be impossible even for a really, a dedicated teacher to detect. And that's unfortunate. So although the cards seem stacked against us regarding AI, there are things we can do as instructors to at least decrease student misuse of AI. I would say these are some things you can do that'll make it less likely for students to misuse AI this way. Clearly state in the syllabus that AI is not allowed. And we can talk about this later, but I would argue that the only way to do this is to say no AI is allowed at all. Because if you allow some AI use is indistinguishable from an instructor's perspective from total AI use. If you're checking responses, so there's no way to allow some, but not all, at least for an online asynchronous class. So I can clearly state it's not allowed. And I do this as well. This also helps with plagiarism. The students do less plagiarism if you specifically make videos or documents talking about plagiarism. And I give students assignments where they get practice with avoiding plagiarism. They get practice with looking at sources and summarizing it in their own words without plagiarizing, which I think is useful. And a lot of students haven't had this experience. So it helps to kind of go through, how do you do this in a way that maintains academic honesty? And this is a really important point. If a student uses AI, you have to detect it and tell them to stop. Because what you don't want is you don't want students talking to each other, and a student tells another student, this online class, if you take it and you use AI to do your assignments and your exams for you, you don't have to put in any effort. They'll communicate with each other. So you don't want a reputation as someone that this is a class that you don't actually have to learn the material to pass. So you have to follow through, you have to tell students to stop when you are 99% sure that they're using AI. In the same way that you would tell a student to stop if you were 99% sure they were cheating on another student's paper. Same thing. And you can create assignments that are less likely to be cheated by AI. Not impossible, but less likely for most students. Like, I have shifted a lot of my assignments, and this took a lot of work for my online class, from essay questions to video reaction questions. Because essay questions like this, do you think agriculture is sustainable, why or why not, is so easy to plug that into an AI program and get a response. Versus this kind of an assignment, where they have to choose a video, watch the video, summarize it, and give their own reaction to the video, and reply to other students based on what they write. Like, you could use AI for this, but it's much harder. It involves a lot more steps. So less students will do it. So I've adjusted my assignments almost entirely in this direction, towards let's watch some videos related to the environment from current events, and then react to it. Something else you could do for essay questions, which I've done, especially when I used to do essay questions online, is you can require students to reference the lecture specifically when making their points. So for example, you could say, why should people care about air pollution and what could be done to improve this problem? Reference at least 3 points from the lecture in your answer, right? Or summarize this video, explain how the events described in the video relates to specific points you learned about in the lecture. So they have to connect what they're doing now to stuff they learned in the lecture. This would be really hard to bypass using AI. Because what you would basically have to do is you have to feed the lecture into AI and like the video into AI, and it would have to connect those to each other. Which I don't know if that's even possible, but most students wouldn't attempt this. Like if you're requiring them, you have to say what lecture it is and what points came from it. Like most students wouldn't try and feed all those full lectures into an AI program. So I think it does help to do stuff like this. I also now require students to take their exams in person at the Testing and Assessment Center, which is a good idea to do anyway for an online asynchronous class. We're supposed to validate the identity of students because you don't want a student to just say, hey, I'll pay you $100 to take this class for me, right? Which they could, if you never get them to prove their identity while they're taking the class. It could just be their mom or something, right? Taking the class for them. So to require them to come in, show their ID and take the exam is a good step, and it's recommended for all online asynchronous classes to do this. I recommend it. At the center, they can be forced to take exams without any tools, on paper, with no, guides, no chance of using AI. They have to rely on their own hands. If you want to do this, you request makeup exam proctor form from my ABC. It's on the left here. You can see it's under faculty. You fill out a form, you put the students' names taking it, and you give a time window. I would say be generous about your window. Give them like a whole week or something. But do require them to take it in person, just because we want to avoid all forms of students using plagiarism, AI, or another person to take the exam for them. Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to make different exams in this case, because if you do the same exam?
No, that's true. That's another good point, and I do that. It's always a good idea to have.
So that is on us,
Right.
basically.
But it's so much better to do it in person, because if it's online, which I used to do, then it's way easier for students they can write stuff down, they can pass notes, they can try and coordinate. So, but if it's an on paper test, then they have to remember stuff anyway, which they have a hard time doing. But yes, it's always a good idea to make different versions of exams, both for online and in-person classes. Yeah, because I've had cases of in-person classes where students between classes, different days of the week, were sharing information. So it's always a good idea. Now for discipline, what I do, this is my experience, I only take action against students misusing AI if the response score is really high, like 95% or greater likelihood of being written by AI using at least 2 different AI checking websites. I've put my own slides for my lectures through AI, and they score in the ballpark of 0 to 25% written by AI. I don't think I've ever scored higher than that. So it's possible that a student could score, 10%, 20%, even 40%, I think is possible without using AI at all. But I think the likelihood that they would score 95% or higher on 2 different AI checking softwares without using AI is exceptionally low. And having that happen more than once on different assignments is extremely low, like way less than like 0.01%. So I think 95% is a strict standard. It reduces the chance of punishing false positives, but it's also important to consider false negatives. And so we have a low rate of false negatives, but also we're unlikely to punish false positives. We probably have more false negatives of students changing things and getting away with it than students getting punished while not actually using AI. But I think that's kind of the balance that I use in my class. If they use AI, this is what I do. I tell them firmly that they were flagged by software for 99% or whatever probability of AI usage. AI is not allowed, and any further AI use will cause me to write a disciplinary report. And I give them a 0 on the assignment, just like I would if they plagiarized the assignment in any other way. And after repeated uses of AI, which again is extremely unlikely that this would be repeated false negatives from the same individual or false positives, despite my warnings, I do actually file a student discipline report. It's not a great thing to do, but if a student just keeps using AI over and over, despite me telling them, please don't do this, this is not good, they keep doing it, then I file this report. The nice thing about Canvas is if you're messaging them in Canvas, it keeps a record of what they did, what they wrote, what your responses were, and you can send that in with your report. This is the website here, it's under discipline, and you just click on for detailed information, submit a report, please click here. You click this little button, and then you start filling out information for the student. And I have done this before, although very rarely, because in most cases, telling them to stop doing it is sufficient for them to stop doing it. Yes.
Does Canvas keep records of everything? Even when the student drops, because with my earlier experience, I caught 2 students cheating. When
Yeah,
I
I
was
think-
teaching online. They dropped the course and I could not find any record of any of their work.
I know that there are some ways of seeing, I think, grades of students that have dropped in Canvas. I don't know if that stays how long, but you have to kind of like, there's a setting you have to do. But I think, yeah, it's probably a good idea to also back this up on your own computer. If you thought this was an issue, I would say that's a good idea, yes.
When I had a student accidentally get dropped, and when they were reinstated, everything came back.
Oh, that's
Even
good,
the comments.
yeah.
So there is a.
It's
school
there.
has a
It's
record,
there.
but the school has to do
Yeah.
it. So the record is kept.
Right,
So-
yeah. It'd probably be a good idea if you thought something was a recurring problem to document it on your own computer as well. It's just that in my case, I had students who went the whole semester just AI. It might have been like a bot or something. I'm not sure if it was an actual student, but kind of bad.
So you gave them a score of AI,
Yeah.
AI negative.
But I think the biggest question is, all this stuff I'm talking about, why do all of this, right? Checking answers for AI use takes time. Changing questions and assignments to reduce AI misuse takes time. Enforcing rules against AI use takes time, and it makes us vulnerable of accusations of punishing false positives. We don't have a general ABC AI policy to back us up. So we can be accused that we are specifically are too hard on AI use compared to other instructors who are laissez-faire about it. So why not just take the easy way out? Why not just do nothing about this, right? I would say this is for the sake of students who don't cheat. That's what motivates me to do this. And if we think about it, in a class, what do grades mean? What do they represent? Why do we assign grades at all? I would say grades represent a student's mastery of the material and their effort in completing assignments and work. Those 2 things. Have they mastered it? How much effort have they put in? And an unspoken part of this contract between instructor and student is that grades are supposed to be fair. A student who receives a higher grade is supposed to have greater mastery and/or they put in more effort. A biology grade is supposed to measure mastery of biology, a history grade mastery of history, and so on. But if we let students use AI to cheat and earn a better grade, then a class grade only represents a student's ability to use AI to do their work for them. So an A in biology then becomes, they've mastered AI. A in reading is they've mastered AI. A in sociology, they've mastered AI. That's not what those classes are supposed to be about. Do we want nurses who don't know nursing, but they know how to type nursing questions into AI? Do we want chemists who don't know chemistry, but they can type chemistry questions into AI and then copy those responses onto their homework? We want historians who don't know history? It hurts our reputation as a college to say, this student has mastered this material. They've mastered environmental biology, they got an A, when they haven't, when they don't really know it. That hurts our reputation, it hurts our ability to say, these students have learned the skills that they are supposed to learn. So allowing students to use AI without consequence, it hurts honest students who want to learn, which is most students. And students with less money, I've had students who don't have their own computers, I've had that a lot, where I tell them that the college can lend them out laptops. There's students who don't have computers in their own home, who might not be familiar with how to use computer programs and websites very much. This has put them at a disadvantage because maybe they are not in a position to use AI readily on assignments. And it hurts the cheating students themselves, because they'll progress through college without having the skills and knowledge necessary to be successful in the real world. Most jobs are not typing questions into AI and getting a response. Most jobs require them to actually know specific knowledge and skills about their area. And again, most students are honest and they don't use AI to cheat on assignments. Despite me seeing a rise in AI use, the vast majority, like 80, 85%, 90%, don't use AI at all. But we're violating their trust if we give higher grades to students who use AI. We're not putting in the same effort as honest students. And that's what motivates me to do it. Also, this widespread use of AI misuse hurts instructors in a lot of ways. Like I mentioned, this is a lot more workload. Like I didn't sign up when I started teaching asynchronously for me having to check so many responses all the time to see if AI was used, and to modify all of my assignments to try and reduce AI. That created a lot larger workload than I used to have. Like in my Biology 104 class, I usually have about 50 students. And each week, these 50 students write at least 3 posts that I read and I grade, all of them. That's 150 posts per week. And even if an AI check only takes 5 to 10 minutes to copy and paste it and resolve it and read it through it and possibly write a response to the student, this is a lot more hours added each month on top of my normal workload. But I do this engagement because teaching an online asynchronous class requires you to have constant engagement with students and for them to engage with each other. And confronting students who misuse AI is stressful for instructors. It makes us feel vulnerable. But if we don't enforce those rules, then we are also vulnerable to accusations that we're treating honest students unfairly, that we're giving an advantage to students who cheat. And again, AABC doesn't have a general policy on how instructors should detect AI or punish AI misuse. I read it. Here's the academic honesty policy. I searched for AI. I searched for artificial intelligence. Nothing. We have a policy against plagiarism, but not specifically against AI use. Yes.
I believe AI policy was presented to the academic senate last year, and it was supposed to be put on the website, but it was approved in the academic senate last spring. So it should be on the website soon.
Well, okay, I guess I'm taking it because the workshops that they had on AI at the start of the semester, in those workshops, they said that there was no AI policy for the college. So I took it from them that it didn't yet exist.
And never went to the board. Board has to approve it.
Yeah, but I guess right now, the situation is that we still don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure what holding it from being on the website, but there was a policy that the wording that was approved to add it to this
Okay,
budget.
well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully that happens.
So although it
Yeah.
will be there soon.
Yeah, but I guess so far it hasn't been, and as long as it's on the website, for instructors' purposes, it doesn't really exist, because students don't have it available to them.
And even if it's not on the website or the
Yes.
handbook, it's official, it's not even official.
Yes.
Like we had stuff in FPD that was not put in there, and we were unfortunate, they're like, no, you can't do that, because somebody needs to see it. Hopefully they'll get their
Yeah.
act together.
So what I would argue is that we should have a general policy. It's important that we do, in the same reason that, you know, ABC has a general sexual harassment policy. For things that are really important, it's good to have a general policy where we can say, oh, a student's mad at me about this. This isn't anything an instructor made regarding policy. This is something specific. This is the college's policy about sexual harassment. We shouldn't have a situation where instructors are crafting policy of this magnitude. Like, you don't want instructors to have their own sexual harassment policies. You know, in my classroom, I try to have a moderate sexual harassment policy and so on. Where teachers differ in how they enforce sexual harassment rules from one instructor to another. For things really important, it helps that the college sets the policy. And whether a student can succeed in a class by using AI to do their work for them should not depend on which instructor they choose to sign up with. So we should have, I would argue, a strict no AI policy across the board.
Question, you do
Yeah.
know that there are instructors for promoting the use of AI in classes and one is to use it as a teaching tool instead of banning.
Yes, I think what I would argue is that for every class that's not specifically about AI, we should not allow AI use. If we have classes on how to use AI, then obviously in those classes, you use AI as part of it, right? But I think for every other class that's not specifically about AI, I don't think it's worth having some AI usage. That's my position on it. So as things stand, the workload required for online instructors to run a good interactive class while enforcing rules against AI misuse is probably too high. Like, it puts too much pressure on us as instructors. And it may be impossible to actually pull this off. To run an effective online asynchronous class while maintaining the same standard of academic honesty, it may just be impossible. Like, even if you try really hard, people may find ways of getting around it. And in the face of this trend towards more asynchronous online classes, it may be good to just admit that, you know, we're in this arms race and maybe we lost. Maybe at the end of the day, this isn't something we can actually win. We might have to transition away from online teaching and towards more in-class instruction. Because then you know someone's there, you know that they're doing their work. And even though it might seem attractive to shift towards online asynchronous classes, it might actually be impossible to pull that off in a way that is fair to all students and to the instructors running the course. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about that should be kind of fun is the negative sides about AI in our society at large. At ABC, there's been a lot said about the positive effects of AI, why we should celebrate and embrace this technology. Just to give a well-rounded perspective, I think it's good to consider both sides of the equation. So let's look at some negative consequences of widespread use of generative AI. Okay, there's a question. Yes, was there a question? Let's see.
Sorry, I do have a question. You sort of addressed it. I wanted to wait until you're finished. Of course, it's frustrating for all of us as instructors.
What if we wait until the end?
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
You already answered that one.
yeah. I guess I'll do it at the end, because I'll try and get through this. Okay.
Yes, go ahead. That's fine.
Anyway. Okay. So I'm kind of an environmental guy, so you could make an environmental argument against AI. AI processing, for this to work, this requires huge buildings full of computers all working together called data centers. These can be millions of square feet in size, and they use a tremendous amount of electricity as well as fresh water for cooling. Just to give you an idea of the impact here, Google's data centers, including a lot of it for AI processing, they expel the same amount of CO2 per year as 3.1 million cars. So this is not nothing. This is a sizable contribution towards climate change. These data centers also consume fresh water equivalent to 180,000 households and growing. It grows every year. So this is a sizable environmental impact that you have to balance against the positive qualities of AI. Is it worth contributing drastically to climate change and to freshwater scarcity? AI can also be used to propagate misinformation, creating fake photos, fake audio, and fake video. This has the potential to sway elections potentially, and to use and manipulate likenesses without consent. Like these AI-generated images of Taylor Swift and supporters of Taylor Swift who were just taking pictures out there liking Taylor Swift, but then used as political pawns and manipulated into seeming to support a candidate which they probably did not, and used as a political strategy. Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, used AI to generate fake images of Kamala Harris and fake voice of Kamala Harris and propagate it on the internet without revealing that it was AI generated. So potentially swaying people that can't discriminate between what is real and what is AI generated. AI art has even been used to win competitions, even when it was not allowed. So there was a state competition in Colorado for just digital art kind of edited digitally, and it was won by art that was completely 100% AI generated. No human impact, no human input on the art itself, besides just writing into a prompt. This was a photograph that won a photography award, the World Photography Award in 2023, and it was submitted as a photograph, but it wasn't. It was AI generated. So no camera involved at all, and it won an award that was specifically designed for photographs. AI is cheaper than hiring artists or writers, so a lot of companies are already firing skilled workers and replacing them with AI. You know, over 4,000 workers have lost their jobs to AI since May. This came out in February. 44% of companies say AI is likely to replace workers next year. That was from last year. This has led to some disasters. Like maybe you heard about this. There was a trailer for the movie Megalopolis, where the company that made the trailer were too cheap to hire actual writers to write the trailer, so they used AI. And what AI did is it created fake quotes by real movie critics and attributed to them, which defamed them. Like that's kind of illegal to do that, to falsely claim that they said those things, and the trailer had to be taken down. But it was because AI wrote the script for the trailer. A lot of people are suing AI companies for stealing their work and using it without paying them or crediting them. So there's lawsuits by artists against AI companies. There's lawsuits from writers like Sarah Silverman, George R.R. Martin, John Grisham. They have a legal challenge against AI using their works without consent, basically feeding AI their books, and even pirated copies of their books. Like the AI companies aren't even paying for the books themselves. They're using illegal pirated copies, according to the writers. A big reason why the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild went on strike last year was to protect themselves so their jobs could not be stolen by AI. Like what Hollywood wanted to do for actors was to scan actors to pay them for a few hours work and then use AI to create a performance of the actors throughout the entire movie. So they'd be paid for 1 hour, even though they'd be used throughout an entire movie. And they did want to do that, and that's the big reason why the actors went on strike, and they reached an agreement that basically said that Hollywood companies couldn't do this. People are also using AI to create music, to compete with and take money away from actual singers and musicians. A lot of this is happening on Spotify. There's tons of AI-generated music on Spotify that's been fed songs from actual artists and taking money away from them, including someone who created AI music and then used a bunch of bots to listen to it to basically swindle money away from Spotify. They got mad at that, but they don't seem to mind the overall existence of AI music within their platform. If we let our students use AI to get ahead, they may get habituated to this. They might try to use AI as a professional, and this could ruin their whole career. Like a lawyer who used ChatGPT to write their report. And it cited a bunch of fake cases, and now they're in trouble for it. There was a study that came out just earlier this year that looked at scientific papers throughout Google Scholar and found 139 scientific papers across many disciplines, including computers and the environment, that were deceptively and secretly written by AI. And the authors didn't say that they used AI to write it, and they have. So it's kind of a widespread problem within law, within the scientific community even. You could say, well, what's the problem? There are still jobs for people to input in words into AI, to generate writing, to generate art, to generate music. So what? Like, who cares if those jobs are available? Should we tell our children that want to be an artist, who want to be a writer, who want to be an actor or a translator, sorry, your job doesn't work anymore. It's an obsolete job, but you can get a job maybe as someone putting in code to generate art, even though you want to express yourself by painting. You can't do that anymore. Is that the world we want to live in? Like, almost every artist hates this. Like, we should listen to them. This isn't something we should just ignore. Like, this is my brother, Joshua Shipp. He's not just my brother, he's also an author. He's written and published several novels, and he's been published in over 60 different publications, mostly in stuff like horror. He was nominated for the Bram Stoker Award. Here's some of his novels, although not all of them, that he's published. I asked him how he's been affected by AI, and he wrote a response. He's kind of shy, but he wrote a response for me, so I'm going to read it to you. Artists and writers are already undervalued and underpaid, and AI programs are just another way to exploit real people's artistic labor. AI programs are fed the work of living artists, writers and artists, and these people aren't compensated in it. Living artists are not able to opt in or opt out of these programs. This is pure plagiarism. I also personally know writers who have to explain to their readers that some of the books released under their name are AI written and published by scammers. People are releasing AI written books by popular authors in order to make money off their fans. AI programs can create content, but they can't create art. To me, art is an expression of thought, of emotion, of imagination, of being alive in a certain time and place. AI can't do that. So I just want you to, take these concerns seriously, that actors, artists, translators, writers are really, really concerned about art. And we shouldn't just say, who cares? There's still jobs for tech nerds that want to just write into AI. Like, that's not the same as the work that these people are doing. So overall, I would say AI misuse by students is a problem. AI contributing to climate change and global freshwater scarcity is a problem. AI taking the jobs of hardworking and valuable artists, writers, musicians, translators, and actors is a problem. AI stealing artistic creations of people without pay, without citation, and without consent is a problem. AI spreading lies about people and helping unethical politicians to trick the public is a problem. So the fact that some people see AI as progress, the future, or inevitable does not absolve us of the responsibility in recognizing problems for what they are. Fossil fuels were seen as progress. Nuclear bombs were seen as progress. CFCs were seen as progress. That doesn't mean that those are great things, that those are things we need to embrace. Pretending that climate change does not exist does not cool the earth. Pretending that COVID is a hoax doesn't save lives. And pretending that AI crises are not crises won't help us. If a change in society is net negative, it's our responsibility to say so. And I would say that's true about this vast proliferation of AI. So that's my talk. I'll now be open to any questions people have. I'll try and look in the chat as well as in the room. We'll try and look at.
There's a lot of chat, that's almost the AI.
Let's see. Yeah. Sorry, there's a lot of chat before this, but maybe if people have specific questions, you can just add it to the end.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
I do agree that there are benefits to AI in the same way that there are benefits to fossil fuels, but I think it's still good to consider both. And the purpose of my talk was to look at the negative side of it. Any questions? Yes,
It's not a question, it's more a comment.
okay,
I appreciate that you raised the concern about this because it is a concern that many people raise. Since AI doesn't look like it's going away anywhere, it seems like we need to kind of see what we can do about it as an instructor, what can we do? And I appreciate that you offer some suggestions on how we can modify our assignments, how we can maybe implement it in some plans and teach students how to use it properly rather than improperly. So,
oh, thank you, appreciate that. I would just say that there are things that, like AI, it seems like it's something that's difficult to get rid of entirely, but that doesn't mean that we can't regulate it at all. Like, I think, fossil fuel use has been almost all of our electricity production for a really long time. But that doesn't mean we can't take small steps to reduce it. In the same way, I think AI is something that a lot of people are calling for greater government regulation, which wouldn't mean getting rid of it, but we could see regulation that companies can't just feed AI anything without the consent of others. And that would be kind of like, I think steps in the right direction.
and the AI policy is coming up sooner.
Good, I hope so, 'Cause, yeah, so far, us instructors have felt vulnerable because there hasn't. Thank you, yes.
A couple of years ago, I had I teach the Bali 304, and they have a major paper to write about infectious disease and so forth, and the parameters. And I saw that I had F students writing me a paper. Well, it could probably be somebody else wrote the paper or the AI did it.
Yes.
So I started requesting the presentation, standard presentation along with the paper. There's only a few students there, 16 to 18. And then I would ask also for them to print out their sources, staple them together and give them to them.
Yeah.
And
Those all seem like good ideas.
I checked those, because I mean,
Yeah,
my nephew sometimes call me a dinosaur because I don't own the latest phone and I like to do things, analog, not digital sometimes, but sometimes we have to request these things. Right now, I've reduced the number of points on that project. I call it project because they have to do something with their hands. Basically, come up with a poster for a particular disease prevention. They have to come up with an actual poster they hand draw or they literally do artistic work they have to do. And come up with a brochure that is an informative brochure based on what they read about this particular disease. So this is something.
yeah,
I've been asked to teach the same course online and without not even seeing the students.
yeah,
And I think that's wrong. That's
Yeah.
plain old wrong because it's a 300 level course. And it's gonna have to increase the work on us to chase after this AI
Yes.
shit.
yeah, I think, yeah,
And do three
Right.
exams. They want me to just have the exam done online. I don't do that. You're not learning. They're not learning.
right. I do think that's something that I wanted to bring attention to, is just, because I noticed this when I was talking to instructors when we had the workshops on AI, that a lot of instructors, I think we just felt overwhelmed with like all this responsibility on us
That's actually what
to kind of sift through students misusing AI, and it just seemed like it was like too much responsibility and workload placed on our shoulders. And I think it's good to say, like, even though it might sound nice to have more and more availability of online asynchronous classes, that it's okay to say that it might not work. Like if we can't figure out ways to do it in a way that a hardworking student gets a better grade than a student puts in no effort, then the class has failed. The
Exactly.
instructor has failed. And that's why I try so hard.
Exactly.
But I know that a smart, lazy student could probably still get by me. And at least for certain assignments, and that bothers me.
It's the E in equity.
Yes,
That's what we're looking at.
right,
Because if you're gonna give somebody a good grade who did a half-assed job,
Right.
somebody who worked really hard, same grade, that's not fair.
right.
I think the school should grab the bull by the horns here and have a real policy.
We have a problem though that we're just offering more and more courses online, and that's where things are going. If we get rid of them, we're gonna lose enrollments.
Yeah.
And it's just, the probability of, or the capacity to cheat online is
Yeah.
just so great.
I also
It's
wanted
a
to
business decision, that's what it is.
I wanted to mention this too, like, I didn't say this before, but I taught during the summer. And it was my online 104 course. I started with 55, actually it was like 57 students. And then after I dropped everyone who was fake, who was not a real one, it went down to like 10.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a problem with online, there's all other people and bots and stuff that are trying to take the course
And they're
to
literally,
get financial
they're
aid.
literally trying to steal money from the
Right.
government.
My class went from 57 to 10. Yes.
So there were 47 fake
Yes,
enrollments?
yes, people who did not,
There might be not all fake, but there are some inactive students that,
Yes.
they think they
but
might
I
be.
think most of
fake.
them, were probably fake.
But
Yes.
that's the problem that you mentioned is the problem that our enrollment services are trying to handle.
Yeah.
Because all colleges across the country see that same problem, that bot or
Yeah.
whatever enrolling as a student. And that's why they're bringing it to the instructor's attention, especially for online classes. If you teach online class and you see students are not active for 1 or 2 days when the class start, contact student, if they don't answer, drop them.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
if you suspect something
Yeah.
like that, drop, because
Right.
that affects significantly
And I
financially.
did, I dropped them right away, but it was like, I'd never seen that before, and that never happened with an in-person class, so that's another thing that like, it's good for people to be aware of and to weigh about the, what we think about in-person versus online. Like, there are positives to online, but there are also negatives, I think it's good to be aware of both.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
This is a really broad question,
okay,
that relates to this. I've often thought that at a college, every class should be required to give at least one major essay test. A written test given in person, where you actually have to write in the presence of the instructor.
well.
And, so that among other things, you can't just give an entire course that's all multiple choice.
Yes.
Because I know there's a lot of courses where every frickin' question, all semester long, is nothing other than multiple choice.
I agree.
And I think that's ludicrous.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
there
in college. So my question is, does anybody know, I guess there's no policy at ABC that you have to give at least one written test. I'm pretty sure that's true, unfortunately. Is that true? Huh?
Academic freedom.
What?
That would be violation of academic freedom to tell instructors what assignments they should and should not do. That's what I.
It would probably be academic freedom issue.
Because as instructor, you are a pro and you decide how to deliver this information. And that's why I think what.
No,
Josh
how to
offers-
test, how to test.
On the test, yeah, and that's what Josh offers some suggestions on how to modify assignment to make it more AI resistant, and so students will put more effort into
Yeah, but I
doing that assignment.
Yeah, I do agree with you that I think there's a lot of issues with multiple choice tests, and I think,
I mean, I use multiple choice.
me too.
My final's a good multiple choice test, but
Yeah, for my online classes, they are taking the test in person. There's
Yeah.
multiple choice questions, and then there are also short answer questions where they have to write. And I do think that it's good to have, like, there are people that have trouble with writing, so I think both of those are probably good to have. But I do think it's valuable experience for them to have to write,
Yeah.
essay responses. Yes,
I kind of think it's something to be said that like, we shouldn't be afraid of imperfection.
yeah. And-
Like
yeah.
to see the students writing in a way that's not perfect is fine.
Yeah.
Like, I love seeing that. That
Right.
means that they're at a stage in their career where they're learning still. And it's like listening to like a middle school band for me, where they
Yes,
kind of,
right.
like, all the music is off key. And I kind of think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear that. I want to hear their imperfection.
And
Yeah.
it's something
I
that,
don't want this like perfectly polished AI
yeah.
statement.
Right.
I want something that's real.
I forgot to mention this, but in the AI workshops they had, one of the points that was raised was, you know, for students who maybe don't have a lot of experience or not that good at writing, or maybe English is a second language, that AI could help fix their writing. But to me, I think the better solution is for, like, unless you're teaching like a writing class, to not be so strict on like how a student writes, but rather like, and that's how I am, when I teach, when I have them do presentations, very little of it is actually for how well they write. Most of it is like, do they get content that's good for the topic? And, you know, that they delivered it and they have sourcing and stuff. So I think that's a way to help students, is don't be so strict and expect them to write perfectly. But then, you know, you won't be punishing students who maybe haven't had a lot of experience in writing or English as a second language, because they can still do really well as long as they're answering the question.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say is the solution to that. Yeah.
May I add?
Yes.
I do the project in my online class, and like Lena mentioned, students are so stressed out that they need to write it perfectly. And so they submit a perfect proposal for their topic. And I see that it's not them, it's not how they talk. So when we meet or when we conversate in an email, I say, you please rephrase it in your own phrase.
Yeah.
I don't, in your own words. I don't need it to be perfect. I need to hear what you think.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like perfect. We're not writers,
Yeah.
or we're not professionals yet. So
I think-
be yourself. And I think
that's
it's
great.
important
Yeah.
to
That's what I
emphasize
always
that
tell my students.
mistake of
Yeah.
good.
It's that, I know it's kind of like maybe like a motherly example, but when I saw my child like first getting up to walk, it didn't look perfect, but it was beautiful because it was their attempt to do it. And that's what I care about, is their attempt, not perfection, not.
And I agree with that, and I think that's a good way too, to like decrease the likelihood of AI use, is just to have that sort of engagement with students. I try and do that too, like for these video responses, I tell them over and over again, it doesn't actually matter, like it doesn't matter, you know, what your position is, or like if you're getting certain things right or wrong. I just want you to have an honest response to this video and say what you actually think in your own words. And you'll get full credit as long as you do that. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be that you get everything right. Because I think that's a lot of times why students turn to AI, is they think, I don't know this thing and I'm kind of scared, so I'm just going to use AI to answer it for me. So as long as you tell them, it's okay to just write some response that's kind of sloppy, or like, you know, you don't know all the terminology, that's fine. You can still get a perfect grade on it, as long as you're just doing the assignment. So I think that is a good one. Right. Anything else?
They're having their own discussion.
Okay, yeah, I look at it and I didn't see a lot of questions, so I mean, it's good that they have this.
It's a controversial topic, but it's not going away. And yes, we're gonna lose a lot of jobs. It's gonna take over.
Yeah.
You know, it's just gonna cut a lot of labor and,
But there, I mean, I agree with you, but I think you could do stuff, you know, like, there are, you know, like, for example, like, there's a lot of video game piracy, but like Nintendo cracks down really hard whenever anyone tries to pass out Nintendo ROMs on the internet. They sue them, they take them to court, they destroy those websites.
yeah,
And they can do it because it's illegal.
Yeah.
So I think if the government said, actually, AI has to get permission from artists and musicians to feed them into their program, which they could, then that would it's like gun control. Gun control does something. You know, it decreases the likelihood. If guns were illegal, there'd be less guns. Wouldn't be perfect. But if you regulated AI more than now, which is basically nothing, no regulation, that would have an effect. You could affect it.
yeah. But if you're by these huge, you know, some of them trillion-dollar companies
Yes.
now, and, you know, the laws are written by their laws.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I agree with you that,
So fast.
Yeah.
Like the progress of it is like
right,
way before the laws.
Yeah.
They're gonna push it, you know,
Yeah.
and beyond the cheating and all that stuff, they're not gonna care about that stuff. And it's just gonna be like the internet, you know, it's just gonna be out there, people are gonna use it, and we're gonna lose a lot of jobs, and, we're gonna have to sue them, you
Right.
know, to get any money from
Yeah.
them, they're gonna keep using them.
So, yeah, a lot of it does depend on the outcome of these court cases, which I know in some of them, I think the artists have actually won a little bit. So if judges decide that the AI companies can't do this, which is like kind of up in the open, because it hasn't really been decided law, that could matter. But I agree with you, but even for things that are like, you know, seem inevitable, I think it's still good to come out and criticize them if they're bad.
Yeah.
Even if this does nothing, I wanted to still talk about it.
The AI itself is plagiarizing, it's taking what's out there,
Yes.
creating something from it.
Yes,
But how do we regulate that? How do we compensate
Right.
people with stealing from it? It might be
Right.
impossible to trace.
yeah, because it's, you know, like in a science paper, you always have to cite everything that you write. That's so important. And yet AI would do the same thing without giving any citations for the sources that are.
It will if you tell it to.
It
That's
does.
true, but by
There is
default,
perplexity gives you the answer with the sources
Okay.
where it took the answer.
well,
There is
that's
a
good.
Julius website also does the same thing. ChatGPT, if you ask, give me the reference to this prompt only from only credible references, it will do that.
Okay, that's good.
But you have to.
It would be nice if that was
specific
always
prompt.
enabled for everybody at all times.
And that's what we need to teach our students, that you will get everywhere. You can get, you know, articles or websites for your information to your question. But the students need to be critical about where that's true or not. So they will have to go through each source and verify whether they can use it or not.
Yeah, like I asked ChatGPT about a fictional paper that I had written, and it just made up a bunch of garbage. So like it will lie.
Citations.
Yeah, like it will lie unless you are very specific
But
about it.
it's gotten
Josh,
better.
I got a question from Zoomlandia when you got it.
So I checked ChatGPT, see if I can write the paper assignment I sent in my class. And it wrote it, it did an okay job, it would have gotten like maybe a B, maybe a C. And then I asked at the beginning of the semester, and now it would get an A, now it does it right, the citations are right, the references are right, and it writes well. The problem is, of course, that, you know, it's doing the work for you.
That's right.
Students aren't gonna be learning it, no one's gonna be reading the scientific papers, if the AI is doing everything.
That's right.
Science is not gonna advance it, no one's actually reading the work that's
That's right.
being done.
And it's kind of the same is true for art and
Yeah.
for music
Yeah.
and for writing, is that, you know, you can use AI to make work that, you know, uses previous work, but we will have a lot less innovation in those fields, the less that we have available, you know, jobs for artists and musicians and so forth. 'Cause
Research has
Hey,
already
Josh, I
shown
got a
that
question in
use of
Zoomlandia
AI
if you got a
is
chance.
getting rid of basically diversity, creativity. AI produces things, but if you look at it, over a period of time, it tends to produce very similar things.
Right,
So everything becomes very
Homogeneous.
similar, yeah, homogeneous, yes, and it's not good.
I think that's why I can catch it too with my students, because it always sounds the same.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's the good thing about having students with their own experiences, is they sound different. They bring their experiences to the table.
And the AI is also reflecting all the biases we have, all the sexism and racism, and it's all reflected on them.
That's true.
When you tell it to generate images, it'll do what it thinks it wants us to, but it reflects our society basically and our biases.
But do you remember when the internet came around
Yeah.
and how people used to, you could write a paper, you write it on paper, then the typing machines came on. And you have to adjust it. And then the computers came on and everyone was freaking out. What's gonna be with the handwriting and so on. And then when the internet came on, the libraries became more emptier and emptier because everything moved to internet.
Yeah.
And people started adjusting to the searches in internet and how to find the information and how to sort the information. So that's similar going on now. It's a new thing again, it's a step up, the next step in the technology, and we are trying to adjust to it and how we can use it to our benefit.
Yeah.
Because it keeps progressing.
Yeah.
So we need to look at how we can use it and direct
Yeah.
our
But
students.
it gives a very
Yeah.
general summary of the papers that it cites and references of the articles cited. So it doesn't go into much deeper.
Right.
It's not as smart. It's putting together a bunch of information. but it's not as intelligent. It's a bit overhyped as far as what it can do. I have asked it to do certain things, it doesn't do it. Like I can feed it a paper and tell it, fix the APA style, and it will fix it. It will fix some things, but not all of it. But it can write it like almost perfectly from the beginning, but it won't really fix something that you feed it. It won't fix it exactly right. If there are errors and things in there that shouldn't be in there,
Yeah.
it will clean some of that up, but it will still leave some of those things in there. So it's not as smart as they say, but it's advancing very quickly.
Improving.
I would say that even though it may be highly unlikely that we could get rid of AI, I think it's important to at least realize that like, if we decided as a society that like, we just don't want this, we could get rid of it. The things, even things that are viewed as progress, like fossil fuels or something, or thinking like, oh, we could never get rid of guns. Like Australia thought that, and then they did. So it's like, if we did decide, we just don't like this AI thing, we could shut it down, even though I agree that's highly unlikely that that would happen. But it's good to at least realize that like, that collectively, these are things that are under our control. So we can decide whether it's net positive or net negative. Okay, well, I guess that's it. Thank you all for coming.
Very
Appreciate
good.
all the questions and feedback.
Josh, I did have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
I was at that Leadership Academy thing. I'm a
Can I hear?
alumni from that academy, so I had to be there. They kept us a little bit longer, but I stayed a little bit after.
Okay, yeah,
It's not a
appreciate it.
problem.
Appreciate you. Did you sign in on the?
Yeah, I signed in.
Okay, great.